This week on the Borderless Church, we're in the country of Hong Kong.
Where it's not really a country.
We're in the Chinese state of Hong Kong.
It's not really a state of China. China does not it's not how it works.
Well, wherever it is, we're in Hong Kong on this episode of the podcast.
Yeah, that works.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Borderless Church, the podcast that takes a practical approach to missions, and to international missions specifically. And in the process, we're going to have some fun and talk about some fascinating things about some pretty interesting places. Along with me, as always, is my co-host and good friend, Brandon Edwards. Brandon, how's everything on the east part of the U.S. this week?
Doing good, staying busy, man. It's been a good month. Been traveling, been as far west as out in Washington State, and then back up in Ohio, and then back in Tennessee. So everything's good. It's just gotten very hot. That's the
Well,
thing. Very hot.
We've reached triple digit temperatures here in the South as well. So I know you guys are probably experiencing that. But yeah, you have been tearing up the road per se, with a lot of traveling.
Yes.
So we're following up after our episode 5, which was in Greece. Really good episode. I think that was we've had the most views of any other episode so far with that one. Over 800 views at this point. So we really enjoyed getting to talk to Dino. And have you had any feedback or anybody replying to you about that episode?
So sure. In fact, one of the neat things about it is my mother and father have actually made a trip over. They're actually over there right now and got to spend this past Sunday with Dino Russos in the church there in Glifada. And he just sent a message back and said noted four new converts, four new Christians that have just come to the church there, that have come out of Islam and the rest. And so just a fascinating thing, work that's going on there right outside of Athens, Greece, in Glifada. Dino continues to amaze. And more than that, I think Dino would tell you that God continues to amaze in his work in those areas with those people. So just a wonderful work. Definitely recommend people continue. Go back and look at the episode if you haven't seen it on Athens and connect in and see all the great work that's happening there.
Absolutely. All right, so we're switching gears this week. We are moving back to the Far East. We were in Japan a couple of episodes ago. Now we're in China, specifically in Hong Kong, or the Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China.
Yes.
That is the formal name of Hong Kong.
It is what I would like to call complex. The situation in of itself, it was a territory for, I think it was 99 years that the UK, in essence, had a lease on the land or owned Hong Kong. It's why English is the main spoken language, outside of also Cantonese and and obviously some Mandarin too. So great ties to China historically, but it was basically a colony, the British colony, for a long time.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was 1996 when it kind of deeded back over. However, that worked itself out, and it's a separate but equal type of scenario.
You're stealing my thunder. Like, seriously, I have
Sweet.
all of this to discuss.
I love it. I love it.
You've just shortened our episode by 20 minutes. So.
Off the top of my head. That's the important part about that. And that's because I lived in China and I had a lot of students who would tell me all the time about how Hong Kong belonged to them. And I sat there going, how is that possible? Trying to figure out all those nuances and complexity.
Well, I definitely want your feedback when we get into the people and the philosophies when we get there. But we'll start off by talking about the geography of Hong Kong. It's located in southern China along the coast. It consists of Hong Kong Island and the Kowloon Peninsula, which is where we're going to be talking about most of the things that we talk about on this episode. And then like over 200 other islands. So kind of similar to Greece in that there's a lot of islands involved with this area. It's near the Pearl River, and of course it's close to the South China Sea. It's humid, subtropical, diverse terrain with a large amount of areas for country parks and nature preserves. They actually do have some woody and outdoor areas that you can enjoy. Population 7.5 million in an area of about 426 square miles. So you're looking at one of the most densely populated places in the world, Hong Kong. About half the population has some type of British nationality. They are still very closely tied to Britain, and we'll talk more about that later. Life expectancy in Hong Kong. If you're a man, you're expected to live till 82, and if you're a woman, you can plan to be around till 87. So it is the sixth highest life expectancy in the world. It has one of the highest per capita incomes in the world, thanks to billionaires. It's a popular place for billionaires. However, there is still a severe income inequality in the Hong Kong population. The languages, as you mentioned, Cantonese, Chinese, and English. 53% of the population speaks English, and 48% speak Mandarin, which is the mainland Chinese language. So early civilization, it was sparsely populated in farming and fishing villages for much of the ancient times of Hong Kong. It's believed the name is believed to come from the Cantonese name for fragrant harbor, mainly because that's what it sounds like when you say it in Cantonese. It sounds like that's Hong Kong is kind of a phonetic representation of that phrase. It was first incorporated to China in 214 BC as part of the Qin dynasty, and began trading with Portugal in Europe in the 16th century. So you see Europe showing up in the 16th century. But most of the 17th century, they banned trade with Europe. They weren't really letting outsiders in during that time. And then the Brits came. So we're going to get into, without going into a whole lot of detail, the British actually were, if we were making a movie, the British would be the bad guy in a big way with how this goes about. So in essence, China had this really massive, almost kind of a monopoly on exports because of their porcelain, because of their textiles and their fabrics. And so they had all of this stuff going out, and the British East India Trading Company was, taking all these goods and things out of China and selling it, and you had all this money, British silver, going back to China, but China wasn't importing anything. So they were just sending stuff out and not bringing anything in. So the British were like, we need to do something about this. We need to get, kind of, it's in some ways to kind of get their goat, but also kind of to maybe to force their hand on some things. Yeah. So they started getting the Chinese population, specifically Chinese smugglers, they started introducing opium. And they got a lot of the Chinese population addicted to opium, which became a major drug crisis in the 19th century. And so the Chinese government tried to crack down on it. They started burning opium warehouses and trying to kick the British out. So the British came back with a naval force and just decimated Hong Kong. Specifically, as it was, all of this was happening in Hong Kong as it was one of the major ports. So you've got the British coming in with their power, the British Navy, and just decimating Hong Kong and just knocking them out of the water. So they forced concessions to Hong Kong. They took over Hong Kong Island. They forced China to allow for up to, I think it was 5 different ports along the southeastern coast. And they made China pay for all the expenses that they incurred during this war. So you got this opium war, which happened from 1839 to 1842. The Brits won, and they I guess took over control of Hong Kong in the process. They had a second opium war from 1856 to 1860, and again they won. The Brits won with the help of France, and China this time had to cede the Kowloon Peninsula as part of the Hong Kong territory. So again, if we were making a movie, the British would be the bad guy in this plot. So it became a British colony. Hong Kong became a British colony in 1841 at the end of the First Opium War. Expanded to include the Kowloon Peninsula in 1860, and then extended once more in 1898. And that was when the rental, the lease that you said, they put a lease in effect for 99 years that British would own the rights to Hong Kong. So it was occupied by Imperial Japan from 41 to 45 during World War II. So there was a period of time when the Britons were not in charge. And then they took back over once Japan was out. Hong Kong territory was transferred to China in 1997 when that 99-year lease was up. In the process, just ahead of that, you had a major immigration out of Hong Kong. You had a lot of people nervous about what going back to China was going to mean. So over 500,000 people left Hong Kong from 1987 to 1996. And then Hong Kong and Macau are special administrative regions of China. They're treated very similarly in that they are one country and two systems. They have separate governing and economic systems from mainland China. They do not have the same laws. They do not have the same rules as mainland China. Chinese national law doesn't generally apply in Hong Kong, and they allow free access to media and internet, as well as not subject to Chinese regulations, and the Great Firewall that everyone else experiences in mainland China. Transportation around Hong Kong is very similar to what most major cities are going to be like. It's highly developed, sophisticated public network. 90% of daily trips are public transportation. The MTR rail network serves 41% of all transit passengers daily with, get this, 99.9% on-time rate. They are hardly ever late, so they are very efficient and very on time. They drive on the left thanks to the British influence. So if you do plan to rent a car in China, specifically in Hong Kong, just know that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. All right, philosophies. So I'll talk about this here, and feel free to chime in considering your experience with the mainland Chinese philosophies. There are going to be some crossovers, but it's traditional Chinese values, family and education, with Western influences, Western ideas, economic liberty, rule of law, very Westernized as far as that goes. They tend to link self-image and decision-making to material benefits, and this is going to be a kind of a theme that we'll be running with, talking about the materialism of Hong Kong. They do hold an importance of Feng Shui, which is the energy forces used to harmonize individuals with surroundings. I kind of missed this image, but if you saw that picture of the guy pressing the elevator button, the number 4 is bad luck. And I don't know if that's a Chinese thing, but in Hong Kong, because of the number 4 sounds like die, and so it's left off of a lot of buildings and a lot of elevator floors and all that kind of stuff. So you don't see the number 4 quite as much.
It's like our number 13.
Yeah, very similar. Except that I would assume that it's not just 13. It's 4 and all the 40s, and I wonder if there's the 24 and 44 and all these other floors.
If your
right?
phone number has the number 4 in it, it's considered bad luck.
Yes. Yeah, that could get complicated. That really could. Economy. So Hong Kong is known for a low tax rate, which is one of the reasons why it's a major international finance center and commercial port. So it's a place that a lot of people want to be from that standpoint. I have the largest number of skyscrapers in the world. You'll see, and from the videos even that we're showing, lots of skyscrapers. It is the 10th largest exporter, which kind of goes back to what we talked about, the history. They are globally the 10th largest exporter and the 9th largest importer. So I guess they learned their lesson way back during the Opium War. And they are home. It is home to the 3rd highest number of billionaires of any city in the world. So lots of really, really super rich people living there. All right, so let's talk about some pop culture, influences. what Hong Kong is known for. They are known for something called Canto Pop, which is Cantonese pop music. Yes, I'm going to let this music play because
It's amazing.
this is good stuff. 80s Cantonese pop. Now you've got some more modern stuff, like this guy right here. Pretty good. I like this. It also became a filmmaking hub in the late 40s with a lot of Shanghai filmmakers moving into Hong Kong. So martial arts films gained in popularity. So you've got movies like Way of the Dragon, which put Bruce Lee on the map. Was one of the biggest martial arts movies of all time. Introducing characters and actors like Bruce Lee, like Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Chow Yun-fat, all these great martial artist actors that we've, even over here in the West, that we've watched and enjoyed. Lots of great stuff. And Jackie Chan, not Jackie Lee. Jackie Chan is one of my favorites. I love his mix of comedy and martial arts. It's awesome. All right, so let's talk about some cuisine. What are you going to eat? They are known for Su Ye, which is late night supper served after 9 p.m. They're also known for their breakfast or lunch portions of dim sum, which is a small food snack served with tea. Usually it revolves around tea. It could include dumplings, meats, seafood, cakes. So you got a broad range of flavors, a broad range of textures, lots of different cooking styles, and mostly Cantonese and Southern Chinese dishes that are considered in that dim sum. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. But if you're going to go to Hong Kong, some must-sees, some things that you've got to do. You definitely want to check out the Sky 100, which is the Hong Kong observation deck. It's the tallest skyscraper in the ICC, is the tallest skyscraper in Hong Kong. Great place to see some really cool views. Check out the Sim Sha Tsui Promenade of Hong Kong film legends, similar to Hollywood Walk of Fame. Just look for the big statue of Bruce Lee. And if you want to do some hiking, some outdoor activities, you can go hike to see the big giant Buddha statue. It's 112 feet tall. It's kind of interesting. They also have some great parks. There's the Dragon's Back hike, which is easy access from Hong Kong proper, but gives you some really nice views of Hong Kong. There's Disneyland. Hong Kong actually has its own Disneyland. It's one of 3 in Asia. So, and you know that Hong Kong is going to do it right. I imagine their fireworks shows are incredible, right?
Yeah.
So, visit a street market. Buy some knockoff brand names in a different street market, like the Ladies Market, the Temple Street Night Market. These are all things that you can do. You might want to check out. So you've also got go try some Yum Cha, which is brunch with dim sum. We talked a little bit about dim sum. So Yum Cha is a brunch. Siu Mei. I really know. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing these right, but Siu Mei is roasted meats. Just look for the roasted meat hanging in the store windows. It's pork, duck, chicken. Looks really good to me. And then there's some street food that you got to try, which is egg waffles. Street snack served with hot and eaten plain, easy to share. So those egg waffles look pretty good there. Yeah. So we're probably going to talk a little bit more about this, but I was really impressed with the food choices and the food options in Hong Kong itself. Now, when we went to China, I actually enjoyed most of the food that we tried. There was a few things I wasn't impressed with, but mainland China, I was very very pleasantly surprised with the food options, and I think Hong Kong would be even better there.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hong Kong has, unbelievable Michelin star restaurants too. So high-end cuisines from all over the world, from Africa, from places. In fact, there's one specific tower. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's like a mansion, and it's 17 stories of restaurants, of Indian restaurants and Asian restaurants and European restaurants. So food, man, it's just out of this world going in that area.
So that sounds like a really, really nice food court, like a mall food court, but high end, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's like a Gordon Ramsay food court.
Yeah. So, fun place to visit. In fact, we were talking before the show, and I think if someone wants to experience China,
Mhm.
but on a
Yeah, but not
westernized
really
version,
China.
yeah, like a
Yeah.
modified China,
Yeah.
Hong Kong is a great place to do that. All right, so we're going to transition now into Christianity and mission work, and we'll talk about where we would actually plant a church in Hong Kong itself.
Yeah, so one of the fascinating things about this city is its history. The last 25 years, it's really become even more. It's really found its roots back into Asian culture because for the longest time, it really was tied to this Western ideology, Western ideas, even though they were Asian by historical nature. So I found that the connection between the history of China and the history of Hong Kong, but also tied with a deeply westernized version of it, is a fascinating premise. And I look at it from a church planting perspective, and there are churches there. There's been work that's been done in Hong Kong. Fantastic people have done fantastic work through the years. In fact, I know of at least 4 or 5 churches of Christ in the Hong Kong region. There are probably more than that. But one of the areas where I thought would be interesting was to really plant a church was in the Tsim Sha Tsui area. And I, like you, have no idea if I'm saying that correctly or not, but it's right in between two churches. And I think it's right on the edge down there near the port area. Fascinating area to be involved in and to be part of because of a couple of things. One, it's the Hollywood area. It's like film area. It's all that. And so this is actually something I hadn't told you ahead of time. But one of the things that I'm trying to do in thinking creatively for church plants is Hong Kong is like it's the port city to Asia, but it has these connections to Western ideologies and Western roots. So what if part of the goal of planting the church there was to make it Hollywood of Christian media? What if part of it was to have a studio there and create because they're known for that there? It is, in essence, the Hollywood of Asia. So why not also make it to where you can really reach inroads across the world through a place like Hong Kong? So that's kind of my first thought process was what would a mission team look like that was made up of people that were writers and script writers and producers and directors and maybe even actors, but then utilizing the local individuals, sharing the gospel on a daily basis, but also creating media and creating Bible classes and Bible lessons in Cantonese and Mandarin in English and making it available from a city like that where you already have that mix of Asian culture, but with Western culture, and utilizing media to do that. So that's kind of one of the top parts because it's a high end area. The expectation is that's what's kind of would happen there, and I do believe that you'd be able to fit into the culture pretty well, even as a Westerner coming in or as an outsider coming in as a missionary to plant a church with the idea of we're going to be vocational missionaries. We're here to work in the industry to create these types of things and utilize that to spread the gospel, to teach the gospel with people, because it's also such a high end area. You mentioned all the billionaires and the people. How do you reach a lot of those people? Well, a lot of those people you're going to end up reaching not just through personal connection, but through notoriety, through film, through those types of things to be able to outreach to them. So I think it's a fascinating balance. So this Hong Kong may be the place where I would say it's time to set up the the Christian Hollywood of the East, set it up in Hong Kong and reach the Western world. So it's more than just the city. It may be the hub to reach the rest of Asia on the whole. And so I don't know how all that would work itself out, but I love the premise of taking something that they're very proud of, that they love the fact that that's so many great movie stars and the rest have come out of there, and then look at that from telling the greatest story of all time, the story of Jesus, and then making that come from there, film it there, utilize the local people there, while at the same time building the church through evangelizing to the local everyday people. I think that's a great way of balancing reaching the poor, reaching the lower class that you would find in essence in the city streets there, and also those in Hong Kong that might see themselves differently, that might see themselves as being, the uber rich or whatever else it may be. You can find a balance in that world. So that would be my thought. That's my grand idea for Hong Kong for seeing how it might work itself out.
So one of the things that we've talked about, we've tried to make obvious to our viewers is that we don't want to just cookie cutter this thing, and we don't want to do the same thing every time. So this is a completely almost out of left field approach to mission work. Now, would you tie this to a church per se, or would you just have like a missionary that's not attached to a church? They're just creating.
So I love the idea because there are existing churches of Christ already there. So partnering with them in major ways to make sure that there's a very symbiotic community relationship while still planting a church in the area, so that you rent an office and have a studio there, but you also offer worship services on Sunday. It's a multi-purpose building. It's not meant just for one day a week. It's meant for every day of the week, and so people can come in and also learn about the gospel at the same time, while they're creating other ways of sharing the gospel with everyone. So that's one of the things I do love about what we try to do here, is that every time we go in a new city, we take into account what's happening in those cities, what's relevant and modern, and marry it with innovative, hopefully, techniques in reaching the gospel into all the world in a 21st century context.
And the great thing about Hong Kong is because it's so westernized, and yet it still has one foot in China.
Yes.
You've got access to everything that you would need as far as the language and people that would speak the language and to get the message out there. But because it's this westernized version of China, you're not going to have as many of the overseeing eyes. You're not going to have mainland China necessarily cracking down on you. Is that how you would understand it? You wouldn't have quite a...
Yes.
I mentioned the China firewall is not necessarily an issue. You have access to worldwide media, so you're not going to have the same restrictions that they would have, obviously, in mainland.
Correct. And obviously you'll still have some issues. China is doing its best to break down that firewall more and more every day and more every year. And that has become more and more problematic. But at the same time, right now, you still do have quite a few more freedoms than you would do in mainland China, for sure. When I lived there, we had to often utilize proxy servers to be able to get access to other things outside of China that were typically blocked. And typically, you'd think it was something weird, but it was Facebook, Instagram, those types of things were blocked completely. Certain Bible sites were completely blocked. And so, ironically, we would use proxy servers that actually went through places like Hong Kong. That would allow us then to reach out into the ether world, into the online world, and find the information we were actually looking for.
Well, I gotta say, partially because of what we do and what I do and where my passions are, this is the coolest concept.
I thought you would like this one. I thought this would be right up your alley.
That's legit. So
and now people know that we don't script these whole entire things. That there's I literally saved that on purpose. I was like, I just want to throw that out there and see how he would react. Be like, man, okay, so you're opening up a full-on studio of creative content and film. I mean, it's like creating The Chosen, but in Hong Kong. And
it's a hot ticket right now. That's very in the now right now, and I think that definitely could. I think that could be a legitimate work there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, so that leads us to the question of the week. How would you utilize Hong Kong as a missions hub to reach the rest of Asia? I'm betting nobody's going to come up with a better idea than we did, but hey, maybe. I guess it's possible.
I just hope they try.
I think so. I'd love to have some people chime in on this and see if they think it would work. You can obviously email us, or you can send us, just reply on this post, or send us a message to borderlesschurch@hbmedia.org. All right, next week we are still diving into the areas that we don't know much about.
Yes.
We're headed to the land of the Sphinx and the pyramids. I said next week. It's next time, next month.
Yeah.
So we will be in Cairo in September.
Yeah.
Not physically, just virtually.
Man, it would be nice to be there. Probably just as hot.
I was about to say it would be pretty hot. Have you been to Cairo? Have you been to Egypt yourself?
I have. Yes, I spent 8 days there earlier on in life, and just a fantastic place, fascinating people. Some of my, I mean, I still have connections on Facebook from my time there, and some incredible stories from my time in Cairo, Aswan, and up the Nile River, and the rest.
Awesome. Well, then we'll have more of your world traveler stories next time. So, episode 7 should premiere on September 6th, right here on Facebook. So keep an eye out for that. Well, that's all the time that we have for this month's episode. For my co-host Brandon Edwards, I'm Brandon Jackson, and we'll see you next month right here on Facebook.
Bye.